Hi everyone, my name is Maureen Green. I'm a licensed therapist, and I come to you with some information on how to have a healthy and a deep connection with your adolescent or teen during these very transformative, developmentally challenging years for many of us. And I'm going to stick to just communication styles for today, but I would love to hear any feedback if I am not covering enough, if you find that it's incomplete. I want to start by asking you to think about how often you hear your teen or have heard your teen say things to you like, you don't get it, you don't understand. You tell me to come talk to you, but then when I do, you don't listen. You just tell me what to do. You always give me advice. I never say anything right. I never say anything that is, helpful. You're constantly correcting me, and I'm just kind of going on and on here. But those are things that often, if a kid is eloquent, they can share. But oftentimes it just turns into an argument and maybe a yelling match. So kids don't have the buy-in to really, do things that parents want them to do, to receive the guidance from their parents, because simply they feel misunderstood, unheard, and that their opinion doesn't matter. And then what happens is they go into relationships where they struggle with being heard or being overpowering because they felt unheard in their families of origin, and either way, depending on a temperament. So how do we do, what do we do to create connection in these conflictual times? We have to do what we want them to do. I know that sounds very simplistic, but think about it. We want them to take a moment and really hear, let's say, what their sibling is saying, or the other person that they're having a conflict with in their life is saying or hearing, to try to understand. But we don't do that. We typically, as soon as we hear the problem, we go straight to, well, that's not right, and we start with the solution. So stop and really hear it, really get what they're saying, and validate their experience. I will say, personally, that is the hardest thing for me sometimes, especially when we don't agree. We don't agree with the behavior they're doing or the choice that they're making. How do I validate something that I don't agree with? Well, find a way. Find a way to see why this person is, choosing this behavior. Or put aside your own judgment and just really, it doesn't have to be right or wrong, right? It doesn't have to, that's not the solution. We're not going to stay with it. We're not going to say, I agree with everything that you're saying, but just hear the person. Some statements validation might sound like, I hear where you're coming from. It is upsetting when your brother is doing annoying things and that upsets you, that leads you to do that to him, throw the bowl at him, or whatever it is, or argue with him, or push him and shove him, whatever the situation is. Even though their behavior might be so much worse, we want to just acknowledge their experience. So that's validation. Also normalization. Sometimes kids are saying things that parents are uncomfortable sitting with themselves. So that then we operate out of our own trauma and our own discomfort. Instead of sitting with whatever fear they have or worry they have, we try to make it better immediately. And, well, don't think about it. Don't worry about it. It's all in your head. You need to shake it off. Be strong. Be brave. Let it go. Don't dwell on things. That's what we've been told, if we've been told anything at all. And so it becomes this habitual dismissal and invalidation. So kids stop talking. They stop talking and stop feeling understood. And that's the first step, being able to find ways to validate. In my own home, I have 2 boys left at home. The rest are out of the house. And often when they have a conflict, one of them tends to be more domineering than the other. And it's really hard for me sometimes to hear his perspective, because his perspective is mean sometimes and selfish, in my opinion, right? And I'm not going to do him any good if I label that for him and I tell him to stop it, because he's not, and it's not going to make sense to him. But if I give him the language to see, I could see how your feelings would be hurt. I could see how that kind of gets under your skin. It really makes sense to me. Sometimes things really, even the smallest things, can make us do some really intense bad things, or whatever, using appropriate language. And it's normal to be upset when things get under your skin. It's normal to have these feelings. I totally understand why you would have these feelings. And just, yeah, I get into that kind of mind frame where I'm like, I don't even care anymore, right? So really connecting and relating, not giving advice, not correcting the behavior, not telling them, well, don't think that way, that's wrong, stop it. But just really kind of validating. And remember, validation does not mean agree. It just means I see you. I see your pain. I see your behavior. And also I see that you're still a good human. Even if you've done something wrong, or a bad thing, or made a bad choice, or hurt someone's feelings, I still see the good in you. So that's number one. Number two is kind of transitioning into empathy and perspective taking. And we as parents, I'm very sorry to say this, guys, we kind of suck at it. Our primary goal in most conversations is to have our children see our point of view, agree with it, and then go and change their behavior. And as teens become more and more independent, they want to figure things out on their own. And it doesn't feel very empowering, and it does not promote self-definition, meaning I'm not learning about who I am on this planet. If I'm a very compliant child and all I get told is do this, do that, this is what you need to do, if you don't do this you'll have a consequence, I'm not learning to be self-defined. I'm not finding myself, I'm just complying. And some kids are good at that. They will follow directions, but they will struggle in adulthood quite a bit, because they're going to still need mom and dad to tell them, where to go, how to do it, and will become overwhelmed and not build self-efficacy, self-trust. So that's one side. And then the other side, kids are argumentative, right? And so for more fiery kids, they will fight you on it, that you get into power struggles. And but the primary purpose here is most parents want to be heard. So let me ask you a question. Can you take the perspective of your child? Can you empathize with their experience? And then can you ask for permission to give feedback? Now, I know some of you are not going to like that, because that sounds a little too soft and too foo-foo, but it's really getting their buy-in to hear some difficult information that you might give them, and really teaching them that their opinion matters and that you respect them as a human. Another thing it does, asking permission to give feedback, once you've validated and empathized and took their perspective, another thing it does, it really teaches them to kind of read their body and decide, am I ready to take feedback? Am I calm? Do I feel heard? Am I open-minded in this moment to hear it? Because how many of you have relational conflict with your partners that, you're not ready to have a conversation, but you end up having it anyway because you don't know how to set that boundary? Or you tell your partner, I'm not ready to have this conversation, and they chase you around trying to have this conversation. All the things we're trying to teach our teens, they do translate into adulthood relationships. So this is why it's important. You're not just preparing them for life in general to be able to sustain themselves financially or academically, but you're really teaching them how to sustain and define themselves relationally. So that's why asking permission is really important. After I validate my child, my adolescent, and I can honestly see their perspective, can see where they're coming from, genuinely, really, which might take a lot of effort on our part. It's not easy to do that, especially when the initial response is, what the heck are you doing? You need to stop doing that and go sit down, and you don't have your phone, turn your phone. Like, that's the typical dynamic for most families. Instead, inquiring about this experience, like, what happened that led you do that? Oh, I see how that could be frustrating. And really, I normally even ask, okay, do you feel like I understand where you're coming from? You feel like I heard everything you wanted to say? And you'd say yes. Okay, that's great. That's a winning point for me because connection has now been established, right? I want you to really pay attention to that, because really all the work up to this point is developing a connection, understanding, having warmth, being compassionate, having empathy for things that we don't like or approve of. It's a very, very complicated skill for parents. But we expect our kids to do that. We expect them to hear what they don't like from us, understand it, hear it, accept it, and go in the world and perform it. And so teach them how hard it is to hear sometimes other people and still maintain your compassion, empathy, and understanding. So I'm hoping this is making sense. So let's say you ask for permission to give some feedback and your kid says, okay, I'm ready. I would even ask, how do you know you're ready? Because people sometimes just say that to get things over with. So I want to teach them, if you're kind of closed off, or you're drained because we've already talked about all of this and now you're tired, or if you're still agitated and angry about the situation, you might not be ready. Let's just go and reconnect that later on this evening. Why don't you go shoot some hoops or go for a walk, or just spend some time with your friends, or just decompress somehow, and then we'll touch base. I don't have to give you feedback right now immediately. It teaches them a very important relational skill, and it also helps them feel respected. A lot of kids go in the world not feeling that they deserve respect in a relationship, so they end up in a lot of negative energy relationships. So be aware that that's also what you're teaching them. And let's just say they say, yes, I'm calm, I'm ready, I am ready to hear what you have to say. This is the time where you can help them change their behavior, or have them look at some things differently. Inquiring about their experience in a way that makes them be critical thinkers, independent thinkers. Asking questions more so than saying, next time what I want you to do is X. Just don't do that anymore. I get where you're coming from, but please stop doing that. Maybe asking questions like, what do you think will happen if this continues? Or how do you think this will affect your relationships in the future? Or what do you think would happen if you did that with somebody else? Or how do you think they might feel right now? Which is kind of empathy and perspective taking. What do you think keeps you from being a better friend, a brother or sister, or to your sibling? What do you think is really behind this thing that's happening? Because it seems to happen all the time. Are there things that you're going through that keeps you feeling really on edge and agitated or hurt? Really seeking a little bit more understanding. And sometimes it's okay to just let them sit with that information and come back, unless it's some kind of a safety issue. Obviously we want to address it right there and then. Once they answer some questions, you might say, so what do you think should happen? Like, what do you think you should do? How do you think you should handle this now that we've kind of talked about it? You'll see more times than not, kids will come up with a very creative and pretty decent solution, and they really then learn that they can trust themselves to problem solve and figure things out. And sometimes they might not come up with a solution, depending on the age of the teen. You might say, well, why don't we both think about it and see how we can both how we can help you do this better next time? Because guess what? This is going to happen again. People are going to get on your nerves. There's going to be unfairness in the world. People are going to hurt you, your feelings periodically. Things are going to go wrong. So let's think about how you can be a better, wiser version of yourself. Because I know that's hard for me when things are going wrong, to stay true to who I am. Can you chew on that? And then we'll talk about it tomorrow morning or afternoon. And I'll think about that too. and inviting them to have these really deeper conversations. So as you reconnect and you hear them, you're kind of building this platform where they're trying to figure things out before they leave our house. And they're not going to say to us, you don't get it, you just tell me what to do, you're not listening, you don't understand. They're going to walk away with a feeling of, she gets me, or he gets me. And remember, that's the biggest gift you can give them, is when they walk away from you feeling that they are a good person. They might not remember what you talked about in a couple days, or even the next day. Sometimes some kids cannot remember conversations, but they will remember how they felt in your presence, and they will remember if you're a safe person to come to and to bear their burdens to, and if you're a safe person to not be judgmental towards them, if you're safe to just listen and not necessarily give advice unless it's like transitioned into problem solving. So I want to review this and leave you guys with it. Number one, validate their experience. Normalize what they're going through. They often feel so alone. I feel like it's only happening to them. So normalize, share some of your experience. I get it, I used to do that, or that's familiar, that's happened to me. You're not alone in that. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. That is so frustrating. I get that. Then ask permission. Ask permission and teach them that they have this powerful tool to listen to their body and know, are they ready to receive some difficult feedback, maybe, like things that they might not like to hear. Sometimes some questions I ask my boys is, how kind do you think that was? It's kind of a loaded question. It's like, well, I wasn't very kind. Yeah, and you're a kind person. So like something's not matching there, right? Like we've got to make some kind of change here. What do you think that might be? And that's feedback. And with adults, we could be more blunt and direct, but kids, as they're developing into their own identity, it's really important to help them figure some things out independently, to develop that self-trust and self-efficacy, and really have this kind of like, I have my own back mentality. Like, I am not a bad person for making bad decisions or making mistakes, that's normal part of life. And my family does not think of me poorly because I've messed up. I haven't let anyone down. One of my boys once said to me, I'd much rather you be angry with me than you tell me that you're disappointed in me. And I was like, what? I was just trying to not be frustrated and angry, and now saying I'm disappointed, that impacted you worse? And then I've heard that from many, many others and many of my patients. It's like when there is this connection that you have with your kid, they want to make you proud. And it's almost easier to let go of the frustration and anger if you're just like going off and upset with them, because, most of us at some point will either apologize or they will just let it go as a moment like that mom or dad lost it, and not really gain anything from that. But when we say, I am so disappointed, it really lands like I as an individual have disappointed this important person in my life, especially if there's connection again, right? Like if there's no connection, they're not going to care about disappointing. And I do have teens in my office who say, I would never pick my parents as a friend. And I inquire, like, why? How come you won't pick your parents as a friend? It's not about politics. It's not about differences. It's just simply, most of the time, it's about they're not very kind to me. They are not very present. They're not there for me. And parents are clueless because all these children's needs are met. They have everything they need and most of the things they want. And parents don't get why their kids would feel this way. So today I'm hoping that I made an impact on you to think about connection and relationships and discipline and guidance a little bit differently. Connection has to be there for compliance to take place. If there is no connection, problem solving or compliance is much harder, and that children distance themselves and slowly lose respect for us and our opinion, which leads to a lot of power struggles. So let me know if this is helpful, if you've gotten something very specific from it that is applicable to your own life, or if you need some more information. I hope to speak to you guys soon in the next month or so. Take good care, and thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.